For as long as we have been capable, humanity has gathered around fires, in caves, and in living rooms to tell each other stories. Most of them are harmless, little more than cautionary tales that seek to keep us out of danger and assure us that the world is safe. But not all of these stories are pure fun. In fact, it's the ones that frighten us that tend to get passed down from generation to generation until, at least in some cases, the line between fantasy and reality become blurred.
Breaking right now at 5, 40 years in a mental institution. The sentence for Morgan Geyser, charged in the Slender Man stabbing case. Geyser and her friend Anissa Wire stabbed classmate Peyton Leitner 19 times.
The crime carried out to please the fictional character Slender Man.
2 preteen girls, charged as adults now, accused of nearly stabbing to death their friend. In a bizarre plot that prosecutors say the girls planned for months.
But just like the urban legends we used to spread around like wildfire, a few of these stories have taken on a life of their own, leaving us to wonder if they were ever really harmless stories at all, or in fact, a tale rooted in our darkest realities. Dear David is one of those stories. Created by Adam Elli in the summer of 2017, the story of the Ghost Boy took Twitter by storm, and on today's episode, I'd like to take a deeper look into the evidence presented to determine if Dear David was just a figment of our collective imaginations, or Adam Ellis's own cautionary tale about the things that go bump in the night. On August 7th, 2017, Adam Elli took to Twitter to begin detailing the haunting of his New York City apartment. What makes this story unique is the vast amount of pictures and video that Ellis provided, as he took us on a journey that lasted nearly a year before everything just stopped. Some of these pieces stand out to me, so instead of detailing the events of the story, as so many have already done, I'd like to take a closer look at a few of the details and see if we can't get to the bottom of Dear David once and for all. On August 7th, Adam tells us that he first saw Dear David while experiencing sleep paralysis. According to him, he saw a child sitting on a green rocking chair at the foot of his bed. He had a misshapen head, and Alice provided us with a picture he drew of the ghost child. The experience ends with the kid climbing down from his chair and shambling towards Ellis, where he claims to have woken before the child reached him. A few nights later, he has a dream in which a little girl informs him that the ghost boy he saw was in fact named Dear David, and that Ellis was allowed to ask him 2 questions, so long as he referred to him as Dear David first. He was also told not to ask him a 3rd question. He'll kill you if you do, she warns him. In a following dream, Adam sees Dear David again. He asks him 2 questions and learns that David died inside of a store when a shelf was pushed onto him. He proceeds to ask David who pushed the shelf and immediately becomes terrified when he realizes that he's asked a 3rd question, something he was warned not to do. Adam wakes up terrified, and the next day he begins to use Google looking for any record of kids who died in stores named David, but turns up nothing. It's not surprising, but we'll get into the reason for that later. What is super important here is Ellis's own admission that he is a regular sufferer of sleep paralysis. In case you are unaware, sleep paralysis is a condition in which the sufferer wakes up in a paralyzed state, meaning that they are unable to move, speak, and in some cases, even breathe. Sufferers often talk about terrifying hallucinations, hearing voices or sounds, and even feeling strange sensations on their bodies while being locked in and unable to move. Personally, I have had multiple episodes of sleep paralysis in my life, and I can firsthand account for how terrifying it actually is. The first time I remember having had this happen, I had no idea what was going on. I remember waking up in the middle of the night. The room was dark, and my boyfriend at the time was sleeping peacefully next to me. For a split second, everything seemed normal. But then I remember being overtaken by a feeling of deep and unrelenting fear. I can't explain why. I just became suddenly terrified, and it was when I tried to call out for help that I realized I couldn't speak. I couldn't move, and I couldn't breathe. I tried as hard as I could, but my body wouldn't budge. I wanted to cry, but even that wasn't possible. There was a laundry basket sitting near the far wall of my room, and I could see it from where I lay. As the panic began to set in deeper, I saw what looked like a gray-skinned woman climb out of the basket and crawl on the ground toward me. She hissed and clicked her tongue, and I remember trying to scream, but my lips wouldn't move. Nothing would move, and it was when I saw her hand come up over the edge of the bed, grabbing my blanket, that I snapped out of the episode and I shot up with a scream. My boyfriend was terrified. I couldn't tell him what I saw. The whole experience only lasted a minute, maybe two, but for weeks afterward I was afraid to go to sleep. It felt like someone was following me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something real I saw that night. The experience repeated itself years later, but the visions are always different. Sometimes it's a person with no full features, and other times it's simply shadows moving around the room. But the fear is the same, no matter what you see. I think it's interesting that Adam first encounters Dear David during one of these episodes, which in and of themselves are utterly and completely terrifying. It doesn't account for the later dream of the little girl explaining who the ghost child is, nor does it account for the second dream in which Dear David appears and answers a few of Ellis's questions. But I guess that also depends on your belief surrounding the condition and what it actually is. According to doctors and scientists, sleep paralysis is simply what happens when your body wakes up during REM sleep and can be caused by stress, sleeping position, and even narcolepsy. In the past, people believed that it was a byproduct of demonic possession, a witch's curse, or in some cultures it was simply an evil spirit sucking the life from you while you slept, such as with the legends of incubi and succubi. I think it's significant to note his experience with the condition, no matter where you fall on the subject of Dear David's authenticity. It could either be the byproduct of sleep paralysis hallucinations, if you're inclined to believe the story is fake, or if you believe that it is real, then it is safe to say that maybe the experience was triggered by a ghost of a child just wanting to be heard. Adam tells us that the apartment above his has become empty, and since it is larger, he takes the opportunity to move in. Things become quiet, and he stops talking about Dear David, believing that the ghost has lost track of him since he moved, which is actually pretty common in tales of hauntings and the supernatural. But soon, things start getting odd again, and Adam takes to Twitter to tell us that his cats have begun acting strange. This piece is problematic for me for a few reasons that I will discuss in further detail in a few moments. Adam tells us that his cats have begun sitting at the front door around midnight each night. They meow and whine, or in some cases simply stare at the door as if something is on the other side commanding their attention. And if you watch the videos, it does seem a little strange. Ellis takes a series of photographs through the peephole of his front door, and even snaps a few of the hallway. He claims to see something in the shadow of the picture, but I'll let you decide what may or may not be there. For now, let's focus on the cats. It does seem strange that his cats sit at the door every night, meow, scratch, or simply wait. There are a few reasons, though, that I have a hard time with this piece of the story. For one, cats are strange by nature. I can't begin to list all of the weird things that my cats have personally done that I simply could not explain, no matter how much I wanted to. Now, I do know that there are a lot of theories out there regarding animals and their ability to see things that we cannot, and I am a believer in the paranormal, so it's a little hard for me to say for certain that this is fabricated evidence. But while we can clearly see the cat sitting very attentively at the door in the videos, we cannot be certain that this is a reoccurring incident. For all we know, Ellis could have filmed a few videos on the same night and passed them off as having taken place over a period of time. Secondly, getting a cat to sit still for a minute or two, which is how long these videos last, would not be difficult, especially if they had a favorite food or treat that they could smell on the other side of the door. That being said, it has been proven time and time again that cats have a greater range of sight in low light and can hear frequencies that we humans cannot. So it's not impossible to say that his cats may be hearing or seeing something that is simply outside of our range of perception. One of the first pieces of compelling evidence comes in the form of a series of photographs that Ellis takes with a Fujifilm Instax9 Polaroid camera. The first series of photos taken in and around his apartment come out pretty normal, but it's when he takes a photo of the hallway outside of his apartment that things begin to get strange.
A photo of the hallway just to show you what that's like. And as you can see, the first one has already developed. So let's see what this one does. That's gonna take a minute. But it is developing black. So I don't know.
The Polaroid develops totally black. Thinking he may have accidentally covered the lens with his finger, he takes another photo of himself doing just that for comparison, and the picture comes out looking entirely different. He takes another series of photos of the hallway, and the pictures come out looking very strange, with the hallway being entirely blacked out. A few followers of Ellis take the liberty of cleaning up the photos and finding what they believe to be a dark shadow figure lurking just outside the doorway. While I have a few issues with the quality of the images, especially the one centered on the doorframe, I decided to put the pictures through a website called Photo Forensics, which can help to determine if the picture was put through Photoshop or not. It was my original assumption that the pictures could have been digitally altered. However, after looking at the ELA, or error level analysis of the image, which tracks the compression level of an image to determine if it had been in fact put through a photo editing program, I found that the ELA was pretty consistent, meaning the pictures were likely not photoshopped. Had they been edited, there would have been a difference in the consistency of the compression, and as you can see, everything looks fairly even. So here's where things get a little technical. Knowing that it's likely the pictures were not photoshopped, I decided to see if it was at all possible to achieve this effect naturally, and lo and behold, look what I found. It's even the same exact camera that Ellis uses when photographing his apartment. The camera itself has settings on it to help in the exposure of your pictures to ensure you don't face any problems like dark spots or overexposure. But the camera itself cannot handle huge differences in contrast, or else something like this happens to your picture. So despite these photos being rather compelling, it seems to be a common problem, especially if there's a very distinct difference in lighting between two areas of a photograph, and therefore the effect could be achieved naturally so long as enough contrast between the rooms were present. Now, a lot of his followers began cleaning up the photos to see if they could find anything within them, and they did in fact find a lot. Faces, figures, and what appeared to be a creature hiding in the dark of his closet. These pictures are compelling, but they're also misleading for one big reason. Pareidolia is a phenomenon that everyone experiences at some point in their lives. It's not a condition or a disorder, but rather the mind's way of making sense of random data. It explains why so many people see faces and shadows or religious figures in the clouds. It's not to say that those things can't be there, or that every experience of seeing the paranormal is all explainable through pareidolia, but rather that the mind has a way of trying to make sense of random shapes and images that it can't otherwise process right away. So, The question is, are these images a result of pareidolia? Are we seeing what we want to see? Or is there really something lurking in the darkness? I'll let you decide. There are a few more happenings in between August and October of 2017, but nothing really of note. Ellis released some more videos of his cats acting strange. Light bulbs begin to burn out, and even the LED backlight behind his TV begins flickering and eventually burns out shortly after being purchased. There are a few ways that these events could be explained through either physics or coincidence, but it all seems fairly normal for any haunting. It isn't until just days before Halloween that Dear David would make his first appearance in front of Adam Ellis, and consequently, the entire world. Adam tells us a story about how he goes into his kitchen late at night to grab a beer from his fridge and sees the figure of a person standing on the roof of the building next to his, watching him through the window. Adam ducks down and takes photos with his phone, and this would be the terrifying prelude to the series of images to come.